We're here at the end, all right? We're all still here, so thank you guys for sticking around. My name is David Kloiber, and I'm running for Congress here. Andy Barr's seat, he's decided to move on to what he thinks are greener pastures. I try and say we're going to put him out to pasture, but that's beside the point. I'm going to just real quickly tell you about myself. I grew up here, I went to Lexington Catholic High School, and I studied physics and mathematics at UK. I left in my last semester to start a software company. We were doing natural language processing, which, if you guys aren't familiar, that's kind of like the proto-AI stuff that you guys see now. So back in the early 2000s, that's what we were doing. And then I left all that behind to chase a girl to Florida and was a ballroom dance instructor for a couple years. But that's, like I said, we all take different paths to get where we are. Anyways, I quickly convinced that girl to marry me. We had a couple kids, and we moved right back here 15 years ago to Lexington because it's where I always wanted to raise a family. I think it's a special place, and I think all of you guys might agree. So I've been here for a while, my entire life. And my day job is I'm an investment manager. I build up companies. I invest in them, tech companies, factories, trucking companies. I try to go into communities, see what it is they need. I can help them. They can help me. We work together. That's my day job. I'm also a philanthropist. I started a nonprofit called the Kloiber Foundation. We have been focused on education and technology. And year over year, for the last 10 years, we've been the single largest donor to Fayette County Public Schools. We've also expanded to most of Eastern Kentucky and a little bit in Western Kentucky, trying to get STEM technologies and tools into the hands of kids so that their outcomes can be better and they're better prepared when they go out in the world. All right? In 2019, we finished a real big project with my nonprofit, which was to put a device into the hand of every kid in every school in Fayette County. The school district was 1-to-1, and that's because we invested in them, and we had no idea it was going to become so meaningful just 1 year removed. But sometimes when you're doing the right thing and you're doing it early, it pays off in a big way. So for any of you guys who had kids during COVID, I know I did, and those little Chromebooks were, we won't say a lifesaver, but a lifeline. How about that during that time? So I ran for city council back in 2020, right before COVID came around, and then I served on council all through that, trying to rebuild the community. I ran for mayor in 2022, and now I'm here before you running for Congress. All that's to say, that's a bio. That's just who I am. And everyone in here has a story of how they got to where they are. But what's more important than who I am, it's what I plan to do. And so I want to focus the rest of my time talking about what I plan to do for you guys, because that's the message that's going to carry us through in November. A biography isn't going to win. We've seen time and again candidates who come up and tell you their biography and their beliefs, and we're not getting across the finish line with that. When you talk to a person about something that matters to them, when you say, this is what I'm going to do for you, like we used to hear about a chicken in every pot or any specific initiative, it resonates. People feel that. And that crosses all the divides. If I go into my church or I go into the grocery store and I talk to somebody about how I'm going to work to make sure they get the health care they already paid for, they're listening. They're not saying I'm dismissing you because you're a Democrat. They're not saying I'm dismissing you because you're talking about a progressive idea. They're saying that makes sense. Common sense. And that's why my slogan is common sense for the Commonwealth. All right. A couple of top line issues, then I'm just going to open it up to talk specifically to the issues you guys have. My website has really some detailed explanations on these, but I'll give you the top line. The first is on healthcare. I'm going to get you the healthcare you already paid for. And the reason we need to do this is because we spent over $200 billion on subsidies to pharmaceutical companies and healthcare industry over the last 10 years. And each of you sitting here has received exactly zero benefit directly from those dollars. In fact, you've had to pay twice. Once for the research, and then again at a higher premium on those prescription drugs when you finally have need of them. This is something that we can directly address by putting a system in place for those NIH grants. When the money goes out, we attach a price to it. We say, you can't just sell to Canada for less than you're selling to us. We're paying for the research. It is a simple, straightforward, common sense policy that, when implemented, can save each and every one of you 15 to 20% on your health insurance premiums every year. That's on average a $1,200 savings for each American family at a time when prices keep going up instead of the other way around. That is a common sense policy. I didn't come up with it myself. I'd like to take credit for it, but it came from community conversations, talking to experts, and drawing from the experience of not just people in our country, but all around the world to find something that's really going to make a difference. Now, what you're going to hear in all these policies is the how, right? We talked about those biographies, the who, the what, the why. It's the how that matters. The how carries us. We need more housing and affordable housing in this community. It's an issue I thought a lot about when I was on council to try and address. How do we make that difference? Well, we can get really detailed, and I'm happy to do that. But there's a whole system in place that allows developers to build something, sell it, and never pay the tax on it. That's 30 to 40% on capital gains tax. They just never pay. We never see those dollars. Now, they have to jump through a couple of hoops to do that. So my proposal to you, common sense solution, is say, let's give them a percentage of that right up front, only if they build what we need. Let's qualify the affordable housing we need in our community and say, you don't have to jump through these hoops. We're going to give you a percentage of this, but we're going to get what we need. And that other percent that we get to take is something we're never seeing in the current system because they're bypassing it with that loophole. It's a common sense solution that gets us the kind of housing we need, and because we're talking about incentivizing developers, you can push it through a split Congress. Those are the kind of solutions you need, something that you can get done now. The last big pillar of my campaign has to do with wages, and we've all heard and seen the stagnation of wages. We see the fight about minimum wage over and over and over again. A core tenet of trying to get something passed is we don't want to cross the river where the current's strongest. If we go into a straight fight about minimum wage, it's going to be a 12-round knockout, and we haven't been winning those. But what if we said, let's make it so that the companies who pay their employees more and give those employees the best benefits are the most profitable companies. Let's make it so that you can't go back to your shareholders and say that you've made the most money for them until you've paid your employees a living wage. This is basically the opposite of Reaganomics. In Reaganomics, we said, we're going to give you all these benefits, and you promise to do something good for us. In this sense, we're saying, do something good. Do what we need, and then you'll get that benefit. Because we all know if you want to make a corporation or a company do something, you just kind of dangle that profit right in front of them, and they'll walk right off a cliff, just like in those cartoons, okay? So that's pretty simple. So again, straightforward, simple, common sense plans. We can't be going to Washington with just an ideal. All of us share these same progressive values, but we can't be building the plane while we're trying to fly it, right? Whoever you elect to this seat is going to have exactly 2 years. That means they need to have the experience and knowledge of how to get something done, and they need to have a plan before they get there. That's what I'm offering with my entire campaign. I've lobbied the federal government through my companies. I've gotten federal contracts through them. I've worked with the DOD and in all those different rooms to make sure we get something done. I've worked in a legislative body, so I understand how we go through committee and we get something pushed out. Everything I'm presenting to you is tangible. It is something we can realistically do that will move the needle for people in their own living rooms, in their own homes, for their own families. So that's my big pitch. I'm happy to take a step back and answer specific questions, but just know if I get a little bit too detailed, you can cut me off. I'd really like to get into the nitty-gritty on it. So, yes, sir.
First of all, I'd like you to spell your last name for us.
All right, Kloib, as in boy, E-R. And you can find all this information on davidkloiber.com. B-E-R, B as in boy. Yes, sir.
Kloiber.
Yes.
And my question is, a significant portion of new housing that's being built is being bought up by private equity, /big capital. And it tends to make people rent peons rather than homeowners. Should we limit, or how do we limit individual family housing being bought by big capital?
So we absolutely have to do something. And in the plan I just proposed, there's an entire section of that bill that talks about community qualified projects. What that means is, to your example, we're going to dangle those profits those guys want around what we need. If we need single family homes that are starter homes for people to purchase, not for them to rent, we can qualify those to be the most profitable, which means those whole groups of people who are only driven by profit are going to do what we need. I'm not going to sit here and tell you we can rewrite the motivations of everybody in the world. I'm saying let's use them to get what we want. incentivize the market to work for us. Is that a fair enough response?
Would you limit big capital from, owning significant chunks of single-family homes somehow that are built?
I think that what we're going to do is we're going to make those big capital people buy the single-family homes and sell them in order to make the most profit for them. So they're gonna be incentivized to sell instead of hold. We're gonna make it more costly for them to hold than for them to sell. Is that fair enough?
That's fair enough.
It might not be the solution we usually hear, but it's the one that we can get past and the one that's gonna show those results in our community. Yes?
So when you say you're gonna dangle profit in front of these corporations, where is that profit coming from? Is that coming from taxpayer money or some other funds?
It's coming from pools of money we never see but we rightfully deserve, right?
So you're gonna have to create legislation or laws that make them pay taxes that they are otherwise gonna avoid, is that correct?
So that's how we do this, because right now, we'll just say this capital gains tax on these developments, right? They're not paying it. They're doing something called a 1031 exchange, which is a like for like. They transfer between two different things. They keep doing it until somebody dies. They take a step-up basis. They never pay that tax, okay? They're supposed to. Now, you know,
Close the loophole.
I'm gonna close that loophole. I'm gonna close it in a way that they're actually gonna be happy about closing the loophole. Because what these developers want more than anything else is cash in their pocket, right? They're doing all this for profit. They're driven by it. We're gonna say, I'm closing this loophole. You're gonna have more cash in your pocket today. The federal government gets more cash than it was previously going to with that loophole, and we all get the development we want. And if that sounds a little convoluted, check it out on the website. I definitely outlined it specifically point by point on how this works.
So, if I may follow up, if you're going to change a loophole, change a law in order to incentivize them financially to take this action, but they're still gonna pay some measure of taxes on the property, that will result in lower profits for them, so why would they be happy for that change, even if it's less procedural or less cumbersome?
So we're now getting really deep, and I love this question. So here's the answer. When you're putting together a development package, and I've done some development of both industrial properties and commercial properties, you have to go to the bank and say, here's where my money goes, and this is the money I have, right? When you get that tied up in another thing in this 1031 exchange, you don't have the liquidity to do your next project because it's not liquid. It has to go a specific way. So what I'm actually telling these people is, if you take a little bit less profit, you can do another project today.
You'll give them fluid funds as opposed to tied up funds, but it'll be less funds.
That's correct.
It's kind of like a tax holiday when you're giving them a discount to bring the money back.
Yep, but only
If they do what you want.
if they do what we want. Okay?
Would you entertain the idea of a renter's tax or a vacancy tax or anything like that that would be more direct incentive on profit motive for people who are doing mass renting?
So when I was on council, we were actually working on something of a landlord registry, right? Because there's a whole lot of issues that come into that and how we register people or license them, I should say, in order to be renters. And you've seen some of the short-term rental things that went through council that I was working on. It's a big issue when we have more rentals than actual homes that people can live in, okay? So a lot of that has to happen at the local level, but that doesn't mean we can't support it with funding and incentives from the federal level. In that bill that I'm proposing, it's called Building Homes, Building Communities Act. We explicitly put more powers to the community over these kind of investments. Because once you start making it so that a rental property is not nearly as profitable as selling this property and doing something else, right? You've now crossed that threshold without having to bash your head against the wall.
We have to change the incentive structure.
We changed the incentive structure, and this is an underlying theme in a lot of the things I'm gonna propose. How do we incentivize people to do what's right? Because, you know, people when they're living their lives, they don't think they're the villain. Nobody's going home thinking they're the villain of the story. If we want people to do the things that we know are right, that we need in our community, we gotta show them how. We gotta tell them how we do this, how it benefits them, and how it works for our entire community. All right? Yes, sir.
I'm gonna ask you this because we've asked all the other candidates.
Absolutely.
I want to give you a pass. How would you vote on the subject of giving funds to Israel?
So, first and foremost, to answer the question that was asked here, the UN has explicitly defined that there is a genocide happening in Israel.
Or Palestine.
In Palestine.
In Gaza.
In Gaza, correct.
Biden.
In 2025, I think it was, they came out with the finding from the committee. that is a genocide. By definition, that is what it is. My concern is about destabilizing the region. So, would I give money to Israel for foreign aid? Yes. Would I give money to Egypt in order to do foreign aid? Yes. Would I give money to Israel without any condition whatsoever? No. Would I go into a situation where I'm going to destabilize a region? I would not. Yes.
If you are presented as a congressman with the situation where it is either yes or no,
Okay.
vote to give money to Israel.
That's all the information I
That's
have?
all the information you have. You don't know where that money's going for sure, because you probably wouldn't, to be frank.
I can cut you off. I'm going to have to say no to voting on that for a lot of reasons. But I will also extend that to literally any bill going forward if I don't have transparency on what's happening with it.
Mhm.
We have taxpayer dollars. They need to go towards the things that we care about. Humanitarian aid, yes. I can't just give you a blank check and write a check and write a check to that. I have to have full transparency on what it's being used for. Yeah?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
You have full transparency.
I have full transparency, and
And
it's going to be used in order to continue a genocide of the Palestinian people?
no, maybe.
Maybe,
But,
okay, but.
right, but, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say, if you have that full transparency and you're worried about it destabilizing the region,
Yeah.
are you going to vote humanitarian? Or
100%.
are you, okay,
Here's the thing, on the international stage, the US has to be a force for humanitarian aid, right? We are a stabilizing force, that is our role. We're not the policemen of the world, we shouldn't be the colonizers of the world. We need to be a force of stabilization and peace. We need to be the forum that people can come to in order to try and litigate their problems. We can stand there, present those for them. In Gaza right now, Egypt has only just recently opened its border for some amount of refugees. I am currently lobbying my congressman and yours to send aid through Egypt, right? To essentially say, Egypt, take a stance. We're going to give you financial aid to help with this crisis and see where they stand. Because right now, it's really murky. I think we had a quote about going all the way back to 1948. We can go back to the 1800s, the fall of the Ottoman Empire. Look, we're not going to solve this problem in 2 years, in 5 years, or maybe even in our lifetimes. But what we can do is continue to be the voice and the force for humanitarian aid and stability in the world. And that's where my priority is. It is not going to be to give money without transparency or towards an end that we cannot see furthers that. I'm gonna go to the back real quick and then we'll come forward. Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm just gonna follow up on that, because I was the one that spoke up before.
Okay.
I just wanna say that, you know, we do focus on Gaza, because terrible things happen in Gaza. But the West Bank is equally important.
Mhm.
Would you support a two-state, situation?
So here's the thing. Me personally, I would love to see a two-state solution. The problem is, I can't force the nations in the Middle East to do that. What we can do as the United States is we can say, in the event that these individuals are entertaining it, we're going to be completely supportive and throw all of our efforts behind it, right? It's a very unstable environment, and our force needs to be stabilizing. So, I believe personally that a two-state solution would be the best for the region, but that doesn't happen unless the Arabic states also support, one half of the demilitarized zone as opposed to Israel on the other side. You need to have people coming together on that. So as much as we can influence people to sit down and do that, that's great. I cannot, from a seat in Congress, make that happen. All I can do is say, we need to focus on the human lives, the human effort, and how we make sure that people can continue to live. Yes?
Following up on that, just devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
If the US said, we're not gonna give you any money whatsoever unless you allow a two-state solution to occur, I'm willing to bet that a two-state solution would occur. Just saying, I'm not gonna ask you to actually.
The one comment I'll make to that is the following. Israel doesn't have, first off, Netanyahu has never said once that he is in favor of a two-state solution. I don't believe that, so no. But again, I don't believe that any of the other nations, of the Arabic nations, have stated they want a two-state solution either. And so I'm not going to put all the blame on one of them. I would say everybody in the region isn't playing nice with each other, and it's been going on for longer than any of us have been alive.
A lot of.
And so, for a two-state solution, which obviously we'd all like to wave our wands and get people to play nicely. But all we can do from our position is help on the humanitarian front and provide a forum that allows people to try and get to a place of more stability. Yes?
I disagree with you. We can force a two-state solution or a non-ethno-nationalist Palestine-Israel. We've been the chief sponsor of Israel. We've given Israel their weapons. We've given Israel $3 billion a year for many years. We've looked the other way when they sank the USS, they're trying to sink the USS Liberty. Just on and on and on. We do have a great deal of influence. Should we use that influence to get Gaza and the rest of the West Bank to be maybe connected with the strip of land we buy from Saudi Arabia?
Well, let me ask you this question. I'm just going to answer with another question. How much control do we have over what Iran is doing right now?
We're not talking about Iran.
But they're part of the conversation of what's happening in the region.
We're not talking about Iran. We're talking about our aid to Israel and what it has enabled, culminating in an expansionist genocidal project now to take Gaza.
Yeah, so we're just going to take the hypothetical, we'll walk through it. We cut off all funding to Israel. Now Israel wants a two-state solution. What happens if their neighbors don't? Because we don't have control over them in the same way financially. So now we've cut off all the funding to Israel, and now we can't force the others to come to the table. And how many times in this history have we seen those same neighbors try to invade Israel in different ways? There's so much conflict there, and I'm going to tell you this, guys. I grew up in Kentucky. I care about local issues. On the national stage, I care that we are this force of stabilization. But I'm not going to tell you that I can go to Congress and solve this problem. I wish I could say on day one I can go to Congress and give us all, health care for all, get Medicare for all. I wish I could say on day two I'm going to resolve the issues in the Middle East. And I wish I could say that on day three we're going to have a new administrator in the White House. But I can't tell you guys those things because that's not realistic. So all the leverage we have on Israel doesn't solve the communal problems of everyone in the region. And I don't want to take a page out of Kissinger's book and be messing with those dynamics if we're not working towards stability and the human lives involved. And I hope that's fair enough. We may not always see eye to eye, but that's kind of where I have to, yes.
So I think that us trying to push for a specific solution, probably not very fruitful, but I think what most of us who are passionate about the topic really want to convey and want to hear from you is that we are willing to use the enormous amount of leverage that the U.S. has to push and incentivize Israel, as you recognize, to create an incentive structure for Israel to stop the apartheid and stop the punishment and the horrible treatment of the Palestinians. Now, whether that's a two-state solution, one-state solution, whatever it is, I think what we really want to hear is, would you support the U.S. using its massive leverage, saying, we are not going to be your big brother, keeping our snotty little brother who's going like this from getting punched in the face when they do this kind of stuff. I think that's really what people are looking for.
All right, then I can just say this. Yes, we should use every tool at our disposal to try and foster more stability in the region, whatever that takes.
It doesn't necessarily have to be that solution or that solution.
I agree. So, and my personal beliefs matter a lot less to people living in Israel because they live there and I don't. I just want to say we need to foster the best possible humanitarian solution and use whatever leverage we have to do so. Okay, yes?
So, the man who's currently sitting in the seat you hope to take sent me an email the other day explaining to me why it's within our rights because Greenland is important and has lots and lots of resources and no one can stop us destabilizing NATO and pulling us away from the EU. How would you fix that 80-year friendship that we've thrown in the garbage?
So how long did that stay in your inbox before it ended up in the trash?
Oh, I still have it.
Oh, you still have it, okay. So, first off, I said it earlier, I thought we were done with the colonial stuff, okay? But, everything old is new again, right? So, we need to make sure that when we're talking about things like this, what we're really talking about is how Congress can put guardrails, right, on the actions of the executive branch. We heard a little bit about tariffs earlier, and we talked about, how we saw the Supreme Court say one thing, even with a very favorable dissent that said, Congress, please pass a law. And then the very next day, Trump decided he was just going to use a different, Section 122 in order to try and get those tariffs out there. Well, the thing is, we need to talk about how we get rid of these tariffs, and not just that we want them gone. Because, as we've seen, a law from 1977 is being abused in a way it's never been used before, and who knows how many more loopholes there are. Here's my proposal for a guardrail. You ready? I propose that we make this classification of tariffs conform to the same emergency standard and clarification that Congress has over war, right? Right now, any action that is taken that is military in nature has to be confirmed by Congress in 30 days. We can use that exact same language against economic warfare, saying that I don't care what loophole you use. You can use Section 122. You can go all the way back to the original, smoot stuff happening in the early 1900s, right? Yeah, I don't care. What I care about is the fact that it has to be confirmed by Congress, because that is an act of economic warfare. We cannot just let it go by. So, this is how we kind of put those guardrails on. And again, I'm always going to be coming to you guys with a how, instead of just a I want to stop this. Yes?
So, yeah, I guess I would pose the same question I posed to the first person. As far as AI, data centers, and then kind of lumping that in with like block safety, the ALPR cameras, basically kind of taking people's data without asking in a way that seems to violate the Fourth Amendment, but also just AI in general.
Okay. So,
5 minutes.
oh, I only have 5 minutes. All right. First things first. When I was on council, I was the only council member that voted unilaterally to stop block cameras from being installed in our city. I voted against the. Obviously, allowing private companies to have that data is a huge breach of trust, and we've all seen some of those things happening. I even voted against the budget that had the money for those block cameras in it because I felt so strongly about it. Now, to the point about AI, this is something I'm very passionate about. Once a year, I give a lecture to graduating seniors from colleges around the country about AI policy and what it needs to look like. Okay? Very briefly, because that's actually an hour-and-a-half lecture, and this is just, I have less than 5 minutes, is that we need to regulate inputs and outputs, okay? AI does a lot of stuff, but we regulate what's allowed to go in, and we regulate the content that comes out of it, okay? We already have a bunch of laws that do that. We need to tag AI on that. The next piece of this, because again, rushing through an hour-and-a-half lecture, is that we're going to have to move towards UBI, all right? This is something a lot of people are talking about, universal basic income. AI, just by show of hands, how many people here in this room work in an office setting or have worked in an office setting in their life? Okay? Jobs in an office setting, up to probably 80 to 90% of them are going to be completely eliminated in practicality by AI over the next 10 years. Okay? This means that we need to have people in the legislature right now on the Science, Technology, and Space Committee, whose average age is 70, I think, right now, who not only understand what AI can do, but what it's going to do. It's going to change every single aspect of our lives, how we interact with each other, how we interact with technology, and how the basics of our economy are structured. UBI is the solution we have to get to. There's a pathway to get there. It'll take us, we're already behind the curve on this with how fast the technology is going, but it'll take us the next 20 years to move through a system that allows us to create earned income tax credits for displaced industries, that allows us to move towards a universal basic income for all, that compensates for these industries going away and not coming back. These are all programs we need to get to. The first step is making sure that we understand what's happening, regulate the input, regulate the output, and prepare for the economic ramifications so we don't just have a large group of our population without any kind of income. Yes?
Okay, that's great.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
What? Okay. My main concern about AI is the massive data centers that are going to destroy our Earth further than it already has been.
Yeah, we need to build them in space.
Why do we need to build them?
So here's an issue right now. We have a lot of focus on data centers themselves as the enemy, but really it's the corporate structure around the building of them that doesn't pay any mind to the environment they're built in. Most data centers are built at the wrong latitude, okay? If we build them in cooler climates, we spend less energy overall on cooling them, etc. So when I said we build them in space, it's a joke. If we have the capability of doing it, we should. because the cooling costs go way, way down. The problem right now, what we have is the environmental and impact on communities when we build them without regard to what we're doing. The reason why these data centers exist and why they will continue to grow and exist is because each and every one of us is getting more connected. How many of you guys have a smartphone in your pocket? Right? How many of you had a phone 30 years ago? Some of us, right?
Oh, you mean these?
Yeah, these kind of phones, cell phone, exactly, right?
Know what that
That kind of progress takes a different shape. When the first manufacturing companies with the Model T came out, people thought they were a blight and they were going to destroy what was happening in their communities. And they did. But then what did we do? We organized, right?
And they're still just.
We created the EPA. We're doing things we can, right?
Has no teeth.
Well, we can talk about Chevron deference, but I don't have enough
Yes.
time, okay? But yes, if you want to put it
I'll
on
stay.
there,
But
I'll stay.
you'll stay for Chevron deference?
Yeah, I'll totally.
All right, I'm sure, if you guys want to hang out afterwards, I'm happy to talk individually or with small groups. I just don't want to keep everybody here so long.
But
I
you
know
have
you
to
get
do it in
very,
the
very
parking lot.
patient.
Yeah,
So let me, yeah, we're in the parking lot. So I'll be sticking around, but let me just close on this, guys, all right? I love this back and forth. I love this because at my core, the entire campaign I'm trying to run is about giving you common sense solutions, telling you the how. We may not always see eye to eye on every single issue, but I'm going to tell you how we do a thing, right? Whether that's working for world peace or putting bread on the table, I want to tell you how. And that's something that when I got into this race, I said, I've always wanted a politician to do this, and so that's who I am and what I'm doing. I've run a campaign that's large enough to cover this entire city before. I've knocked on 70,000 doors. I've got 30,000 votes, which is more than anyone else has run in this race before. I've served in a legislative body. I've negotiated with the federal government, yada, yada, yada. I have a biography that's not going to win. What is going to win is if we have policies and ideas that are new and that take those progressive beliefs we all have and talk directly to how we get them done. So I'm going to ask you guys for your support. I hope you'll support me on May 19th and then again in November so we don't just win then, we can win every day thereafter. Fair enough?